It was a night that began like any other, in a town where not much ever happened. Villisca, Iowa, a quiet patch of farmland and dirt roads where folks knew each other by name, where the houses stood modest and unassuming under the open sky. It was a town of church bells and Sunday picnics, where the only shadows came from the swaying trees in the hot summer sun. But on the night of June 9, 1912, a darkness crept into Villisca, a darkness that would linger long after the sun had risen, a darkness that wore the shape of a man with an axe. The Moore family had just returned from a church service, their hearts light with the joy of community. Josiah Moore, the father, a man with strong hands and a gentle smile, his wife Sarah and their 4 children, Herman, Catherine, Boyd, and Paul, settled into their modest home. 2 young friends of the Moore children, Lena and Ina Stillinger, were with them that night, invited for a sleepover. The house was filled with the sounds of laughter and whispered secrets, the children's feet pattering across wooden floors as they prepared for bed. The moon hung low and bright, casting long, soft shadows across the sleepy town. No one saw him enter the house. No one heard his footsteps, soft and deliberate, as he slipped in through the unlocked back door. The intruder moved like a shadow through the darkness, his breath steady, his heart beating with a cold, calm rhythm. He waited, listening to the sounds of the house settling into silence, of sleep wrapping its gentle arms around the inhabitants. He had patience and a plan. Sometime after midnight, he made his move. The man, dressed in black, his face obscured by the brim of a dark hat, climbed the narrow stairs to the 2nd floor, where Josiah and Sarah lay sleeping. In his hand, he carried an axe. Its edge gleamed faintly in the moonlight, a crescent of steel that promised death. The first blow was swift, brutal. The axe crashed down onto Josiah's skull with a sickening thud, splitting it open like a ripe melon. Blood sprayed across the wall, dark and wet. Sarah barely had time to stir before the axe came down on her too. Again and again, the sound of bone cracking under the force of the blows. There was no scream, no cry for help, just the wet, heavy sounds of slaughter in the dark. But the killer was not done. He moved with purpose, with a grim determination, his breath steady as he descended the stairs and entered the children's room. One by one, he fell upon them. Herman, Catherine, Boyd, Paul, his axe rising and falling with mechanical precision. The children never woke, never had a chance to scream. The axe came down, again and again, the sharp edge slicing through flesh, shattering bone. The small room was filled with the metallic scent of blood, the walls painted red with the lives that had been so cruelly taken. But still, he was not finished. The intruder made his way to the downstairs guest room, where Lena and Ina Stillinger slept. The girls, stirred by the sounds from above, had just begun to wake, their young minds still foggy with sleep. They saw the figure, dark and menacing, standing over them. Lena managed to cry, a small, frightened sound, before the axe came down on her sister. The blade caught her on the side of the head, sending her body sprawling across the bed, her blood soaking into the sheets. Lena tried to escape, to flee, but there was no escape, no mercy in the dark. When he was done, the killer did something strange, something that would haunt the minds of the investigators for years to come. He covered the faces of the victims with cloth, as if trying to hide their ruined faces, as if trying to erase what he had done. He draped a skirt over the mirror in the bedroom, as if he could not bear to see his own reflection, his own monstrous self. He left a plate of food on the kitchen table, untouched, and a bowl of bloody water in the basin, where he had tried to wash away the gore that clung to him. And then, just before dawn, he vanished into the cool morning air, leaving behind only death and questions that would never be answered. The town awoke to a nightmare. A neighbor, concerned that the Moores hadn't come out to tend their chores, made the gruesome discovery. The screams that followed echoed through Villisca like the tolling of a death knell. The police arrived, but there were no answers. Only the grim spectacle of a home turned into a slaughterhouse. Blood stained the walls, the floors, even the ceiling. The axe, left abandoned, its handle sticky with dried blood, lay beside Josiah's bed, a silent witness to the unspeakable violence. Panic spread like wildfire. Who could have done such a thing? Who could have taken an axe to an entire family, to children, without leaving a single clue? Rumors began to fly. of strangers seen lurking in the shadows, of drifters and madmen, of old grudges and dark secrets hidden beneath the surface of the town's quiet life. The whispers grew louder, the fear more palpable. No one felt safe. Doors that had once been left unlocked were now bolted shut, windows barred, curtains drawn tight. The investigation was frantic, desperate. Suspects were questioned, theories proposed, but none could explain the sheer brutality, the senselessness of the crime. The police searched for clues, for signs, for something to make sense of the madness. But the killer had left nothing behind. Nothing but the bodies, the blood, and the axe. Theories ranged from a wandering lunatic to a deranged butcher, to a jealous rival or an enemy from Josiah's business dealings. There was even talk of a traveling minister, a man who had been seen leaving town by train on the morning of the murders, his face pale and drawn, his eyes wide with something like fear or guilt. But no evidence, no confession, nothing that could point definitively to who had done it or why. Weeks turned into months, months into years, and the case grew cold. The town tried to move on, but the specter of that terrible night hung over Villisca like a shroud. The house on 2nd Street became a place of whispered stories and hushed voices. People said they could still hear the screams at night, that the walls still wept blood. They said the souls of the dead lingered there, trapped, unable to find peace. The axe, now a relic of horror, was locked away, but its shadow loomed large. People talked of the man with the dark hat, of his cold eyes, his steady hands, his heart empty of all mercy. They spoke of the way he had slipped in and out of the night like a phantom, a wraith with an insatiable hunger for death. But in the end, there were no answers, only questions. Questions that would linger in the hearts and minds of those who heard the tale. Who was the man with the axe? What dark force drove him to commit such an atrocity? Why did he choose this family, this town? Did he find what he was looking for, or did he move on, seeking new victims, new lives to destroy? The house still stands today, its windows boarded up, its rooms empty, but the memories remain. The people of Villisca don't talk much about that night anymore, but they don't forget. And sometimes in the dead of night, if you listen closely, you might hear the soft creak of floorboards, the faint rustle of fabric, and the whisper of an axe being dragged across the floor, echoes of a horror that still lingers in the dark, still hungry, still waiting.